The city of Walkerton is a relatively small city, lies by the Lake Huron, and if traveling from Toronto, it lies on the northwest of the city in about 180 kilometers as the crow flies. The incident happened dated back to the year 2000 in May. It experienced a major issue in drinking water. It could be called a crisis, for the bacteria called E. coli bacteria was found and determined to be extremely fatal and deadly to the people living in the area. To be exact, the incident happened during the middle of May 2000. It happens from day 10th to 12th. During this time to the beginning of December, the people have no safe water to drink. In order to determine and solving the problem, there were many involvement of different companies and agencies. On the government side, there was the Justice Department of Ontario, and there was also a private company called GAP Environmental Service Incorporation, located in London, Ontario. Besides, another agency called the OCWA, which stands for Ontario Clean Water Agency. The determining of the contamination source in the Walkerton incident is relatively hard because it is far from big cities like Toronto, and at the same time there were no highway runs through it or any gigantic garbage dump like in the cities. Hence, by looking around the area of the factory, engineer can determine the cause of the problem. So, before there was a forest, but after a gigantic fire, it was soon burned out and become a pile of lumberjack. And below the hills there were many cattle fields where cows released their manure into the environment. So as soon as the rain comes, there were no woods to trap the water back, so it creates a flood and flush everything, including especially the manure, contains the E. coli bacteria to the water factory, more specifically the water wells. Therefore, the water contained the E. coli bacteria from these wells were transferred to multiple homes in the area. And tap water is no longer safe to drink because it is heavily contaminated with the deadly bacteria. As the result, the hospital at that time being in the area was overloaded by 1,000 patients sent to the hospital without knowing what is happening. And as the record says, approximately or as many as 5 people were found dead from the drinking of contaminated water. And how crazy it is to think back when 1,000 people had to cope with nausea, cramps, and especially diarrhea. And as for the solution, the OCWA has gathered a group from Toronto to solve the problem with quick and safe in both long and short term. The first plan was to create a pipeline that directs the water from the nearby lake, which is the Lake Huron, to the Walkerton factory. In fact, how surprising it was when the way that they came up with is just like how water is treated in Toronto. But however, it costs a lot of money, for it is the most expensive way, and at the same time very time consuming. So they came up with a backup solution, is to install a high-tech filter at the end of the well to filter the spring water that flows above it. And until the beginning of December, which is December 5, samples taken from the water found to have no more E. coli. The water is finally safe again. And this part of the presentation is gonna be about how water is treated in the city of Toronto. The water intake pipes extended into Lake Ontario and collected raw water. In some areas of the city, the pipes may as long as 5 kilometers. And then the raw water is mixed with chlorine and soon to be in the screening parts in order to remove large objects and debris. In the next station, chlorine is again added into the incoming lake water to kill microorganisms. And next, there was a mixing tank where alum is also added, so it caused the small particles to split up and clump together, and soon enough they will precipitate it. Next, the water is transferred to the settling basin, where heavy flux drop off the water and collected along the bottom. The water then is transferred to the filtration stage, where it composed of carbon and sand and gravel. Water is next transferred to the storage tank, where both chlorine and fluoride were also added in to kill the last remaining microorganism. The storage tank would purify the water and keep it safe within a certain amount of time. Next, a certain amount of sulfur dioxide is also added into the water in order to balance the fluorine and chlorine. Next stop, ammonia would be the last substances to kill the microorganism, and then the water taken raw would be taken as sample to testing until it is okay. Then it is going to be transferred to multiple homes around the Toronto area. In order to provide enough safe water, around the Toronto area. Four major plants were set up. They are the FJ Hedge, Island, Harris, and RL Clark. And in this last part of the video is gonna be about the potential career from water treating. The job requires its worker to monitoring equipment, taking samples, analysis and read instruments, maintain, repair tanks, and blah blah blah. The working place for these workers depends on where they want it to be. They could be on the field where they get to see the real world, or the office filled up with reports, or the lab to do testing experiments. And the education requirements are, surprisingly, it only requires a high school degree, which the student must take these following subjects. Or they could go to college and take different kinds of courses that implies to the possible career. And about the payment, the salary starting around 38,000 Canadian dollars a year. With higher education, it could range to 53,000 Canadian dollars a year. And that's the end of my presentation. Bye, I'm going to bed. It's 2 a.m.